So, do bad things really happen in threes? I have a friend of mine, one of my best friends, and he is absolutely firmly convinced that bad things always happen in threes. And he has multiple chapters of his life to point to where he can say, that happened, then that happened, then that happened. I've discussed this with him multiple times, and I've brought up this topic with many other people. And it surprises me how many people have a superstition about bad things come in threes. I don't think so. I don't think so. Let me explain. The way I see it, and I've experienced it in my life personally, when I've had chapters where bad thing happens, another bad thing happens, another bad thing happens. If I'm honest with myself, and I do my level best to try to be honest with myself, and I look back, right, and I do a post-mortem analysis, or I watch the film post-game, what I see happening is something bad happened. Usually my own doing. And my own doing is that causes bad things. Most often, if I were to summarize it for me personally, is willful ignorance. To be honest, right? And I think that's kind of true for a lot of guys. But so so something bad happens, most likely due to my willful ignorance. And then I'm what? Angry, pissed off, right? In other words, some form of reactive. Now, if you know anything about energetics and how that influences your state of mind, your overall state, and then how that influences your thinking, which then influences your actions, you know then that if you're in a suboptimal, if you're in a reactive state of energy or a lower level of energetics, let's say frazzled energetics, and you're reactive, you're not going to be in a peak state. You're going to be having reactive thoughts and emotions. And then your thinking is going to stem from that source. And so your actions and decisions are going to be downstream from that. And usually what happens is if something bad happens and I'm in a reactive state, my tendency in life has been to try to course correct really hard, really fast, whatever it might be, which is actually like an overreaction. And coming from a reactive state, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that there's going to be a second bad thing. Right? You see what I'm saying? Because if I'm in a reactive state and then I'm taking action, trying to force something, course correct, bounce back, try to fix in 1 day, 1 hour, or 1 week what took me 3 months of willful ignorance or 6 months of willful ignorance to create, right? Or just negligence, procrastination, whatever you want to call it, right? Now I'm trying to snap back. That violates the principles of the universe. That isn't going to work. And so somewhere in there, I'm going to metaphorically strain something, right? And then when that goes wrong, second bad thing happens. Now what? Well, now I'm really pissed, right? Now I've got quiet rage. Now I'm angry with myself, angry at the circumstances. I know I can't be blaming things and playing victim because that's not going to help, but I'm still frothing, right? And now I'm probably getting a little despondent, bitter, depending on what the circumstances were. So that's going to put me into another reactive, low energetic state. That's going to fester for a little bit. That's going to stew, right? That's going to marinate for a little bit. And what's that going to lead to? Another action or set of actions that are suboptimal, blah, 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 to another bad thing. Then what happens? It's usually what happens for me and for most guys. All right, enough is enough. I got to get my shit together, back on the grind, locked in, blah, blah, whatever cool little on the grind, locked in phrase you want to throw at it. And that tends to have been the pattern, looking in the rearview mirror and doing kind of like a really deep analysis of those chapters and seasons of my life. It's not that bad things come in threes. It's that we usually, so often as men, have something go wrong because of willful ignorance, willful negligence, distraction, not paying attention to the details, right? Not staying focused. And then when something goes sideways, we tend to quickly overreact, thinking we can muscle it back on track. We deny that we're not pissed off or whatever it might be. And typically, if you find yourself in that reactive energetic state, typically whatever your first instinct to do is usually going to be the exact wrong move, and you're usually going to do it until you've run this loop enough times in your life that you finally one day wake up and go, okay, there seems to be a common denominator here, and that common denominator seems to be me. Maybe I should take a step back and rethink things here for a little bit. Right? And then if your first instinct when you're in a reactive state is wrong, but you do it, again, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy to create a second bad thing. And now you're creating momentum. So it stands to reason you're going to create a third bad thing. But then by the third thing, again, now you're like, all right, I'm sick of this shit. Let me just, shake it off, reset. Because now at this point, you're realizing reactions aren't working. So now you're going to try to take action, not reaction, but action that you should have probably been taking 6 months ago, a year ago. Now, this doesn't address circumstances and situations like where, maybe your pet dies and then 3 months later your uncle dies, and then 2 months later, I don't know, you hurt your shoulder in the gym. But who knows? That's on the metaphysical plane. But I'm talking about circumstances, scenarios, and experiences that are downstream of your actions, choices, behaviors, and habits, which is most of the circumstances, experiences that we go through in life anyway. So if you have this superstition about bad things come in threes, and they do for you, I would invite you to consider that that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you were to actually zoom in on every single bad event in a series of bad events in that chapter of your life in the past, and be honest about each standalone event, what led up to it, right? What role did you play? What could you have done better? You'll typically find that you just became overreactive. Your energetics were way off and frazzled. You weren't in good prime state. And with that bad energy, you created some bad thinking. Bad thinking created some bad choices and actions. And you compounded the issue, and you gave it momentum. That's usually what happens. I have found that if I have a bad thing happen, doing less / doing nothing is the last thing I want to do. And it so often serves me the best in terms of short-circuiting the momentum on that bad thing, turning into 2 or 3 bad things. By doing nothing, I mean not being overreactive. So if it's a circumstance that involves other people, which circumstances in life so often do, whatever that initial reactive conversation is that I want to have with them, shut my mouth. Sleep on it. Sleep on it. Give it a day. If I'm still angry about it the next day, take a couple days, 3 days, whatever, until at least the reactivity's gone. And I can gain some perspective on it that's grounded and I'm chilled out. Right? That just applies as an tactical example to a scenario where a conversation is required and I might be heated or angry, right? With somebody else's performance, choices, decisions, whatever. You know, if it's like a business thing and somebody's, for example, not following through, or something isn't working out the way you expected, or you're following a course or a program and something's, hitting the wall, relax. Step away for a minute. Step away for 30 minutes. Go for a walk. Step away for an hour. If you're getting wrapped around the axle, getting wrapped around it even harder ain't gonna fix it. You get what I'm saying? Like, doing more of what's not working can't be the answer to getting it to work. That's just common sense. And so, if you're hitting that red line, right, revving hard at something, metaphorically speaking, and it just ain't happening, you need to take a step back. It might help just to breathe, go, like I said, go for a walk, take a whole day away from the thing, get a good night's sleep, get fresh eyes on it. I can't tell you how many times I've done that, whether it's wait a day or two to have that conversation when I'm a lot more calm, grounded, operating from wisdom, not from emotion, or taking a few hours away and gone for a walk, had a cigar, came back to the business challenge or problem, and suddenly just saw it like a whole new thing. So, bad things don't happen in threes. We just tend to give momentum to things because of our emotional reactions, and then our unwillingness to accept responsibility for the first thing in the first place, and trying to muscle it and force it into not being a problem, which then usually creates another problem.